You guys see how they reminded you guys that I was right before lunch? I know I'm standing in the way between you and lunch, guys. I'm Jillian Longbattle. I'm here on behalf of the Indiana Attorney General, and I'm going to talk to you guys about data privacy and security. Um, I am actually really enjoying this conference. This is a lot of stuff I did not know. So I'm assuming many of you guys in this room are auditors. Yes? And I don't envy you guys. That job is tough and a lot of details and a lot of time. So guys, kudos for the things and the work you guys are doing around the state. Um, how many of you guys are aware of the increase in data breaches and cyber attacks across the country? Just by a show of hands, how many of you guys are seeing this? Okay, so you guys know why I'm here then, right? I know you guys have important work, and I think that keeping our state safe will require some due diligence from all of us. And so looking and making sure that the people we serve have policies and procedures in place will really mitigate the risk of a successful attack. So I'm going to spend about 30 minutes talking to you guys, first of all, about what is privacy. It's funny because I'm not aware of many people understanding the difference between security and privacy. Just show of hands, how many of you guys understand the difference between security and privacy? Okay, a few. Okay, I get it. A lot of you in the room are commonplace. A lot of this, it's nuances. So I want to explain the difference between security and privacy. I want to explain what personal information is, especially in a time where personal information isn't really personal when you have social platforms that make everything public, right? So I want to talk a little bit about what's private in a public space, and then what is our role as government employees, as public servants, in keeping that information protected. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the guidance that Indiana has in our Information Privacy Practices Act. It applies to state agencies, but I really think it's good guidance for small businesses, school districts, hospitals. A lot of these places are definitely under attack. They are targeted. So I'll start off by what is privacy. I like to use the description, or I like to use a house to describe the difference between the two. So a door, security alarm, bars on a window is how you protect your house, right? We put locks on our doors. We might even have a fence to make sure that it's hard to get inside on our property. That's the how we protect our things. So as it relates to government, we might have firewalls, passwords, data might be encrypted, right? That's how we protect information. The what we protect is privacy. So in terms of a house, you might have your grandma's pearls put away in a keepsake upstairs. You may have your wedding ring inside of a jewelry box that you keep locked away. The what is the privacy piece, okay? So what is personal now? Guys, I am on social media, unfortunately a lot, and I see so much personal information shared publicly. So I'm gonna ask a question. Do you guys really feel like any of our information should be private? Considering how much we share and we're putting it out there ourselves, how much of that should be private? Do you guys think we should expect privacy today in our country? Show of hands. We put it out there. So we should, okay, I see. We still should have some level of privacy, even though we've made it public. Health info, you know what's funny? You say no health information. I have friends who have said, my mom's out of remission, or I am cancer free. this year. So interesting enough, we are putting our information out there. I've had friends that say, I caught COVID, right? So what we used to think was personal, including our health information, is now private, is now public, okay? So how does Indiana describe personal information? Well, it's really a broad definition. It's any information that describes, that locates us, that indexes us, or even infers or offers personal characteristics, right? So the school we go to, our employment record, our finger and our voice prints. I mean, the messages we leave on people's answering service is considered personal information. Now, while this definition is broad, it doesn't actually mean it's confidential. It just means it's personal. So with that, what's our role in keeping personal information private, right? So again, when you're looking at your servicing the clients, what are they doing to make sure that the data that they're collecting from constituents is secure? Are they determining what information should be protected? So like I said before, there's an uptick in cyber attacks. And I'm going to say this because I'm seeing it so much, especially on the dark web. Governments are a big target because of the mountain of data that we collect, right? And so what's interesting is that we're particularly vulnerable because oftentimes we're sharing that data. Data is on the move. Interesting enough is that human error has been an significant reason behind data breaches. So training is really, really vital to mitigating that risk. I put this slide in the presentation to show that it has had a significant impact on state government. South Carolina was hit in 2012. It affected 3.6 million South Carolinians, and the state only has 6 million residents, okay? Eskenazi Health was just hit a few months ago. Johnson Memorial Hospital, where I live in Johnson County, was just hit 2 weeks ago, okay? This is really affecting the operations. It's not even just the businesses that are ceasing to exist because they have to pay ransomware or their online system is shut down. This is affecting Hoosiers, okay? So I put this up there to say Texas, South Carolina, Georgia, the Georgia Secretary of State wish that they could have done some things differently, and this was a tough learning lesson for them. So what are some best practices that you guys can either share and or look for when you're out there with your clients? First of all, I'll ask this. How many of you are aware of Indiana's fair information privacy practices? Did anybody know about this act? Okay, that's fair. Well, I'm really teaching today. Okay, teaching today. Well, I will tell you guys that this is a very, very important act and can be very, very useful in helping clients keep information safe. So data minimization is something that we can all practice. How many of your clients are actually looking at the data they're collecting and seeing if they need it all? Like, a good question to ask is, do we need people's driver's licenses and social security number to identify them? We may not, right? So kind of scrounging and looking at the applications that are submitted, just kind of doing a quick overview to see if some of this information is necessary. Because to be honest, some of these offices are hoarding data, and that's why they're targets. If you don't need all of the information, then don't collect it. So if there is a breach, it's less information out there. right? Security. What kind of physical safeguards do they have in place in addition to the online security? So I'll ask, do they have a list of people that they are aware of who has access to confidential information? Confidential being medical history, social security numbers, credit cards. In our own offices, are we aware of the people who are actually able to access this information? Are we keeping confidential information separate from public information, right? So if you have a sheet that literally has people's email addresses, phone numbers, and addresses and names, keeping that separate from their transactional, their credit cards and stuff would be key. So that's a measure or a protocol that you can have in place to help protect people's information, right? Once the information is separate, it makes the bad guys do some harder work in trying to penetrate or grab both sets of documents. Data sharing. I mentioned this being a risk in data breaches. I'll give a quick, let's see if I do have time for this. What happened in Georgia was a sad tragedy in 2015. The Georgia Secretary of State collects people's voter registration information, right? The Department of Revenue in Georgia asked the Secretary of State, could they transfer that data, addresses, confidential information, because they wanted to verify information that they had in their system. Well, this request wasn't pursuant to law. And guess what happened? Yes, there was a data breach. This information was downloaded on a CD, all of this information, and it didn't go to the Department of Revenue. It was accidentally sent to different voter registration places in Georgia. It cost them over $18 million. Okay, 2015. So when we're sharing data, one of the key things is to make sure it's pursuant to law. Make sure there's some kind of statute or some kind of that authorizes this transfer, because I think it was the FTC was involved in that investigation and realized that this wasn't even an authorized transfer. Another thing is that if you are going to transfer this data, we have it in our statute that it should be in the benefit of the constituent. Does this transfer of data help them? It doesn't mean that they don't have to submit the same documentation to one office to another. Does it reduce duplication of records? So it's just kind of mindful things like that to consider when we are looking at data sharing. Operations. Guys, how many of us are often trained on privacy and security? I think we all have to take security training, right? Yes. Yes, right. We all have to do this. Are local government agencies doing this? Are we looking at policies and procedures to see if they are being trained annually or semi-annually on security? And the reason why I'm asking this is because, again, the numbers are rising. There are people who literally just sit in their homes and try to attack systems or waiting for an error to occur. We've all heard of the dark web, yes? Yes. Has anyone seen it? No, right? I saw the dark web for the first time and it was amazing. It was mind-blowing because it literally has tabs for illegal activities. Like they literally say, we have this data for sale, and they're just selling people's information. I'm just like, wow, where do you find this stuff? So I say this to say is man, personal data is the hottest commodity now. We are the hottest commodity. Our information that we give up so freely, by the way, on social media is literally sold on the dark web every second of the day. So training is key in keeping information safe. Use limitations. When we're collecting this data, it's key that we only collect what we need and we only use it pursuant to our authority in the statute. So taking information and creating lists that don't need to be created, or sharing information or doing anything outside of the statutory rights is why there are a lot of data breaches. So refraining from preparing lists of names and addresses for commercial use or charitable use, it's actually best practice not to do that because it's a gold mine for the bad guys. Notice. How many of our local government school districts have a public notice of how they're using the information? That's key with transparency. Disclosing the statutory authority for why they're actually collecting this information is helpful for Hoosiers. What are they doing with my data, right? I can tell you just a personal experience. I was living in one school district and sent my kids to school, and all of a sudden I started to get emails from Jostens. They sell like class rings and yearbooks, and I thought, how do they know that my child is in the 8th grade and ready to get her school yearbook? It said, Jillian, you can't let Savannah miss this opportunity. Yes, I can. She'll be okay. But who are you? And that's when I realized that my information had been given to Jostens, who, guess what, was hit with a data breach, right? So when your information is being collected, let the people know, why are you collecting their information? How are you using it? Who are you giving it to? Operations and compliance. This is a key. Having the organizations develop policies and procedures to practice privacy and data security is key. Without the policies, you're winging it. And in this day and age, considering that people are doing this for a living, we don't need to be winging it at this point. Disclosure of a security breach. By law, if a local government agency, small business, school, municipality experiences a data breach, it must report that breach to the Attorney General. Specifically, if that information is unencrypted information, or if it is encrypted information and the key to unlocking the encryption is available to the bad guys. A data breach needs to be reported to a consumer reporting agency if over 1,000 Hoosiers are affected. And how is that breach supposed to be disclosed to the AG? By mail, by telephone, by fax. And that's also disclosure to the Indiana residents actually also can be used in that manner. Letting people know that their information has been accessed can be done through mail, telephone, fax. Failure to disclose this can be actionable by the Attorney General. And I've learned that many in our state were unaware that data breaches had to be disclosed to the AG. So guys, I've got about 10 minutes and I wanted to open this up for questions.
This is a broad question. I don't know how it applies per se to county auditors, but do we have any sense of, as you mentioned some of these cases up on the screen, dating back a decade or more, Do we have any sense anecdotally of the long-term damage to people? Is it largely that this data is then floating out there and is sold on the black market, or what we call that for commercial purposes, where they're harvesting Jostens, for example, and or is it used for exploitation and where people are being invaded and stolen from, or what have you, bank data or what have you? Maybe a broader level discussion about long-term damage, not necessarily the governmental entity that is stolen from, but from the people themselves.
Sure. Well, LifeLock, you guys have heard of these companies? I don't see them going away anytime soon. Identity theft is real. I can tell you that over in the European Union, they are taking data security, data privacy so seriously that in 2018, they passed the GDPR, the General Regulation Data Privacy Act. And what it did was it's allowing their residents to have more authority on who gets their information and what is being done with it. And so in that country, if you give your information to Target, because I'll tell you, every time I go online, Target wants my email, and I'm just buying toilet paper, right? I don't get it, but they want my email. And if I lived in the EU, what I could tell Target is, I'll give you my email, but in 3 weeks, if I change my mind and I don't want you to have it, I can actually submit a form to Target, and Target has to erase my email. If I tell Target not to sell my email, which is of course why they asked for it in the first place. Let me not say that. I don't know if Target might need it because I'm actually an icon customer of theirs and they want to always keep tabs on me. But you have more rights over there with what's being done with your information. Interesting enough, California 2 years ago followed suit and passed the CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act. And so across the country, more and more states are looking at this and allowing US citizens to have a little more control over their information. It's very interesting because we are also the ones that put our information out there, right? So we look at information, especially our personal and private information, a bit differently. So to your question of what's the long-term effect? I think that we have put so much information out there, I don't see how you claw it back, if that makes sense. And so I think being more aware of what we're doing is first a start. I think putting your mother's maiden name on your Facebook page and then talking about your anniversary, your dog's first name, and where you went to middle school might not be key, since a lot of those are security questions when you are locked out of an account, right? And so I think it's being more mindful. What I can also say is that on the federal level, privacy legislation has been, or privacy bills have been introduced. So you may see here in the next few years, we kind of look at privacy and information a bit differently. Is anybody aware that Apple came out and they had a proposal to be able to scan people's phones for inappropriate images of kids? You guys didn't know that? Okay. And so I was thinking about that time that my 2-year-old and 3-year-old were taking a bath, and I had snapped that photo, and I was like, I have a lot of pictures of my kiddos, right? Playing in the tub. I say that to say is that we are going down some interesting roads here when it comes to our privacy, and it's an interesting discussion right now, and is how far do we want to go? Should we have some kind of safeguards in place with companies having our information? Do we want those rights, right?
We have people that request list of funds, whether it's surplus for surplus funds or for refunds. The company on a lot of our appeals for refunds for taxes sign a contract with these people. Is there a limit to what the information we should provide in that case when they have a contract with the property owner?
Okay, so it sounds like, is there a third party? So
Yes. So I'll just throw tax appeals. They go out and they first of all request a list from us of refunds. Well, they actually go to the appeals. They manage the appeals for these people on property taxes. So they have a contract with them. They request the refund be sent to them first, and then they send the amount to the client upon agreement. I wondered if there was restrictions on that. And also for surplus fund, there's a company everybody knows, FLRC, who can, through the public access request a list from us of surplus funds. That means when we sold their property, if there was any overage from the taxes bid on that property, they can claim it within a 3-year period. FLRC will contact them and get an agreement with them that they'll take for a portion of that surplus fund. They will collect those for them. And I wondered if there's prohibitions on those lists, prohibitions of what we give them.
So I would have to read the statute to see what are you guys authorized to disclose, but it's worth taking a look at the statute to see what information you guys are authorized to disclose and with whom. And if you don't have that authority, is there some kind of agreement in place with the party that you're disclosing with that upon releasing this information, they have security measures in place? Because it's still personal information, and it's personal information that the government agency, has been entrusted to protect. So one, I would go and check the statute to see if you are authorized to release that information. And secondly, what measures do they have in place that they're keeping this information? Because it sounds like it's financial information. What do they have in place? So looking at your vendors to see what they have and what they're doing is also key to protecting data.
On that issue, we actually have a local ordinance in place that prevents us from sending electronic information about the tax sale electronically to these vendors. They can come in and look at our binders, and that is public record, but they cannot obtain the information, or we don't have to provide it in electronic format, which protects us, but it also protects the people who have these surplus amounts available. It's a big business. One of our biggest attorneys in the area that was flying people in to collect their money or to get money on their behalf just recently lost his law license as a settlement for his predatory actions. So it's something that we take seriously in our county to protect that as much as we can.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Well, thank you guys so much, and enjoy lunch.